In episode 11, Richmond is rolling. They are one win away from getting back to the Premier League, and they're led by Sam, who just scored his first career hat trick. But as everybody's congratulating him, he gets a text message from Rebecca. And she does congratulate him, but it's more of a friend and not a romantic partner. And that's pretty disappointing to Sam. The next day, Ted, Rebecca, and Keely are all in Rebecca's office, and they're all discussing how Keely is going to be featured in Vanity Fair's Women of Business section. After they're done celebrating Keely's accomplishment, Ted asks them to chip in for a going-away present for Dr. Fieldstone. Everybody just decided on cash. So Ted collects some dead presidents, or in this case, dead queens, I guess. But that's when Higgins walks in. Because Higgins got an email from a guy named Edwin Akufu, and he is a billionaire. He inherited a lot of his dad's money, and he wants to meet with Rebecca. Higgins doesn't know why for sure, but he thinks it's because Edwin Akufu wants to buy Richmond. When a billionaire wants to take a business meeting with you, you do it, even if you don't want to sell your club. So Rebecca tells Higgins to set it up. Ted then heads down to his office where Nate asks him if he can run a new strategy by him for the game coming up. Ted loves it and says, yeah, all right, we'll run it through practice today. But Ted's cavalier attitude with it annoys Nate because he feels like this is another one of his ideas that Ted is going to take credit for. So he tells both Beard and Roy that when this works, and it will work, he's going to let everybody know that it was his idea. And Roy tells Nate, that's the job. Nate then asks both of them, but don't you ever want to be in charge, get all the credit? And Beard says that Ted winning, Ted doing well, is going to shine a light on all of them. The coaches then head out to practice, but the practice is interrupted when a caravan of security and a helicopter show up. And that's because Edwin Akufu has arrived in Richmond. He quickly meets with Ted, says hello to him, but then he heads up to meet with Rebecca. Rebecca does want Ted in the meeting, though, so right after practice, Ted also heads up. And Rebecca lets Edwin know that she has no interest in selling Richmond. And Edwin says, I'm not trying to buy your club. I'm trying to buy Sam. I've recently purchased a club that I can't talk about right now, but it is a team in Africa, and Sam might be interested in going home. And I understand he's under contract for 3 more years. That's why I'm going to make you an offer you can't refuse. But Rebecca really doesn't have any interest in listening to an offer from Sam, although she kind of owes it to Sam to at the very least let him talk to Edwin and make that decision for himself. So Sam comes up to the office and him and Edwin head off to talk. But Rebecca is suddenly flooded with emotions at the idea of Sam leaving. Sam and Edwin start off their day touring a museum. They're looking at a painting done by a famous African painter, and Edwin lets Sam know that he recently purchased it so he can get it back to where it belongs. He also admits, though, that he's not the everyman he appears. He actually hired everybody in the museum. They're all actors. They then head off to have some traditional African food, but he also tells Sam that this place doesn't actually exist in London. He flew in his own cooks. While Sam appreciates all this, he does end up telling Edwin, I don't see myself leaving Richmond for whatever team you're thinking of buying. And that's when Edwin tells him the team he's buying is Casablanca. He plans on making Casablanca one of the premier clubs in the world, and he wants Sam to be a part of it. In fact, he wants the entire club to be African. He tells Sam, you inspired the world with bringing awareness to what was going on at home. That's why I want the man you are, not just the football player. Sam wraps up his day with Edwin, and Edwin gives him 72 hours to decide what he wants to do. But upon walking back to his house, he's giddy. He calls his dad and tells him what an awesome day it was. Although, when he does get back to his place, Rebecca is waiting for him. Rebecca's been so conflicted on what to do with Sam that she had to come right out with it. She told Ted. The two were having an affair. She didn't know what to do. And Ted was supportive as always, but didn't really give her an answer. So she headed over to Sam's house and waited him out. So when he arrives, she tells him, I can't give you an answer on us. And I also can't ask you not to go if you want to. But I just want you to know, I hope you don't go. As for the rest of Richmond, after practice that day, Roy went to go pick up Phoebe, but it was a half day. Her mom already got her. So all Roy finds in the classroom is the teacher. But the teacher's setting up for an art show that Phoebe won't be a part of because her art is incredibly realistic tits. But Roy ends up helping the teacher out, setting up for the rest of the parents. She does end up asking Roy at one point, are you married? And he just says no, never mentioning Keely once. But he agreed to do a Vanity Fair photo shoot with Keely that day, so eventually he has to run. And speaking of that photo shoot, Keely had to go and pick up some clothes for it, and Nate tagged along. Nate wanted her help on picking out a suit. As Nate is trying on a suit, she says how nice it is to have a guy around because Roy would never do something like this. He's just too manly, if you will. Nate comes out in a ridiculous-looking suit, and he's saved by Keely, who says, yeah, that's not it. So it's back to the drawing board. But they start drinking champagne because these suits are so expensive that you'll want to try to get your money back with the free champagne. It takes a little bit, but they end up finding the suit. Nate comes out, he looks great, and Keely says, "You look so hot." She goes in to go fix his tie, and out of nowhere, he just says, "Do you ever feel like you want to be the boss?" And Keely says, "Yeah. After meeting Rebecca, she's the one who really inspired me to be a boss. People like you and I, we can't help but dream big. And no one's going to fight harder for their dreams than us, right?" I mean, the scariest part is just making the decision to go for it, because once you do that, and then Nate shuts her up by kissing her. He immediately pulls back, though, and starts apologizing, and Keely starts telling him, "Don't worry about it, it's okay," but it's very awkward, and the damage is done. So now Keely has that weighing on her conscience. On top of it, she's extremely nervous about this photo shoot. And Roy, who just arrived, tells her, "You're going to be great. You've done 1,000 magazines." But the reason that Keely's nervous is because those were all about her looks. This particular piece is about her. So he gives her a quick pep talk, and it makes her feel better, and they go out to take some awkward pictures. During the photo shoot, one of the camera people has to go get a new camera, and that gives Keely and Roy a little bit of a downtime to talk, and that's when Keely comes out with the Nate kissing story. And Roy isn't really that mad, probably because he doesn't really see Nate as a true threat. He just thanks her for telling him. He then tells her about the situation with Phoebe's teacher, about how she asked if he was married or not, and he just said no, and nothing else. But Keely one-ups everything when she tells Roy about how Jamie came up to her during the funeral and told her that he still loves her. And that is a whole lot for Roy Kent to process. And they don't talk about it because the photographers come back and she starts snapping away. And then finally, there was Ted. He heads up to Dr. Sharon's office to invite her to a party the next day, but she's not there. Higgins is. He's reclaimed his office because Dr. Sharon dipped out a day early. Ted cannot believe that she left without saying goodbye. And Higgins tries to hand him a bunch of letters saying, well, she wrote everybody a letter saying goodbye, but for Ted Lasso, that is not good enough. So he heads to her apartment and he waits her out. And when she shows up, he doesn't even wait to exchange any pleasantries. He gets right into it, yelling, "How could you just leave?" She apologizes, saying she's not very good at goodbyes, and he says, "Well, as a baby, I wasn't very good at walking and talking, but I stuck with it, and look at me now. I mean, we had a whole thing planned for you. NSYNC's bye-bye-bye routine. Hell, we even got you a gift." And that's when he slams down the envelope of cash. Fieldstone says, well, "Ted, you knew I was leaving." And Ted says, "Yes, I did. But at the very least, I thought I'd be able to say goodbye to you. I mean, my dad left. My wife left. I mean, out of everybody in the world, you're the only one who knows how I feel when I get abandoned. And you picked up and left." Fieldstone explains that she wrote about all of that. It's all in the letter that she wrote him. And Ted pulls out the letter and says, "Oh, this? Well, I'm not going to read your letter. You got something you want to say to me, say it to my face. I mean, I thought we had a breakthrough." And she says, "We did, Ted. Thanks to you, I've learned that expressing my vulnerabilities can help my patients with theirs. You helped me become a better therapist." And Ted cannot believe that she was about to just skip out of town without telling him any of that. But she tells him, "Ted, it is in the letter." So Ted picks up the letter and he opens it up and he starts angry reading it. But it doesn't take more than a paragraph for that angry face to turn into an emotional one, because Ted is pretty touched by what Fieldstone wrote. When Ted finishes the letter, she explains that she's just more comfortable with writing goodbye than saying it. And Ted's demeanor has changed. She tells him that her train to Royster doesn't leave till midnight and asks him if he wants to buy a drink. And since she suddenly has a ton of cash, he takes her up on it, so they head to the pub. And they're having a ball. They're playing pinball, throwing back a few drinks. But Ted heads to the bathroom and Fieldstone heads to the bar to grab 2 more drinks. But when the bartender returns, she only returns with 1 drink. And Fieldstone's a little confused because she ordered 2, but that's when the bartender hands her a letter and says, "Ted asked me to hand you this." And it's a handwritten letter from Ted Lasso that says, "Goodbye." And Fieldstone can't believe that Ted just got her with her own move. He also made sure the bartender put one of those little army men in the drink. So Ted Lasso's night ended on a high note. But as he's standing in his apartment, he gets a text message from Trent Krim, the Independent. And Trent sends him a link to a story that he's written saying this will be in tomorrow's paper. And the story is all about how Ted had to leave the sidelines because of a panic attack. Trent then texts him, "As a journalist, I had to write that. But as somebody who respects you, my source was Nate. Would you care to comment?" And Ted says, "No comment." Thank you so much for checking out this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought this sucked. Make sure to be nice in the comment section. If you don't see the next video up in the end screen there, I'll get it up in a few days, not to worry. And I have merchandise, so go buy a mug or something. It's never too early to think about Christmas gifts, folks. Once again, thank you for checking out this recap.